Hello everyone and welcome to the Henchman's Memoirs. This is our 5e Dark Souls of Drakkenheim campaign recap. And if you recall when we last left off, our party is sort of in the off-books part of the campaign where it's a lot of content I've created to kind of fill in these middle levels of the story. And the party had told me that they were going to return to the Smithy on the Scar to talk to their old friend Gertrude Ironhelm and the dwarves of the Ironhelm clan to get more information about, delirium and artificy and whatever else. So the party went up there. They made some good reaction rolls. They bought some delirium, and Pietro was talking about trying to find out how to use firearms. I've included primitive firearms in my campaign. I've tried to make them attractive by giving them a wider crit range and a lot of damage, but you can't reload them, as a bonus action or anything like that. They take a long time to reload, and Pietro would rather just throw this magical returning chakram thing that, I'm sorry, I've been pointing at Atticus, that Atticus made for him, which he can use twice around. And so he tried to learn a little bit about gun firing and gun safety and all that, but he rolled pretty poorly, and I'm like, you don't have proficiency in it. So but Atticus talked to the Ironhelm brother, who's an artificer, and was trying to find out about meteoric iron, which is an important element in creating a lot of these magic items in the campaign. He's like, well, maybe we should go up to the edge of the crater, and see it, collecting some of this stuff directly from the source. And whatever his name was, the Ironhelm guy's like, you don't want to go up there. Things are pretty rough down here. They're actually kind of close at the Smithy on the Scar, but they don't head up that way towards the actual crater at all. In fact, that's the direction that most of the monsters that they're fighting off are coming from. So after all this, they spent the night. I think they actually went out and went to their camp. They have a camp outside the haze. And then they had promised me they were going to go see Ryan Graymere up here at the Rose Theater. And no, I think this is the Rose Theater. Get up here and talk to her. And I prepped for all that. And but the dwarves told them about Schloss Mordenheim. Schloss Mordenheim I'm actually getting from one of my favorite YouTube channels is PhD&D. We're running a Dark Sun campaign based on his idea on another channel that there's a link in the doobly-doo. But then also he's done a bunch of Ravenloft videos, and one of them, Schloss Mordenheim, is basically the Frankenstein realm of Ravenloft. So I decided to just import that completely into my campaign, right? So the dwarf guy that they're talking to tells them, well, there's lots of meteoric iron up at Schloss Mordenheim, but I mean, this guy was a noble who was interested in artifice. He was interested in artificers' work, and when the meteor hit, there were probably a bunch of artificers up there trying to show off their stuff. A lot of it might be made of meteoric iron, So the party hears this, and they start talking about it for a minute. And they're like, well, the Black Ivory Inn is up here. That's where Peter's sister is. And, Schloss Mordenheim is up here somewhere. Why don't we just totally forget about our promise to go see Ryan Graymere, the Iron Banshee? Why don't we just throw the DM a curveball and let's just go to Schloss Mordenheim now? I mean, and I told them flat out, I hadn't had time to flesh out Schloss Mordenheim. I'd just taken some notes listening to PhD&D's Dr. Bauer's video, but it was not ready to run. But, again, don't do this to your DM. Your DM suffers enough. But anyway, they decided to go on up here. And they realized one of the main obstacles was going to be crossing the Drann River, right? Throughout the city, there are bridges and stuff, but of course, getting into the inner city is pretty difficult unless you're going by one of these gates that they already are friendly with. They've never tried to get through any of these gates. They don't even know what's there. So they talked about it a little bit. They were camped out here with the dwarves, and they decided to go around and try to just get across here somehow and get up to Schloss Mordenheim that way. Another when I was doing the thing about the faces of the city, I told you guys I had different ideas about how different parts of the city are haunted in different ways at different times. Something I got from Dishonored was this idea of a whole flooded part of the city that looks like Venice, all these buildings sticking up out of the water, and there's even gondolas being pulled around by the keepers of the city, and it's this creepy, quiet, the water is clear, you can see all the way down to the street, see things floating in it. So they had come through that basically by finding some doors and random tables, just whatever scatter terrain I had sitting around. They pulled it up and decided they could row their way around on that. And of course, they didn't roll any random encounters. And I did get to include an encounter actually from our Temple of Elemental Evil campaign, where the party encountered the Midnight Peddler. They encountered him 3 times in the Elemental Evil campaign in an attempt for me to give them this poem, this riddle that kind of clues you into a bunch of stuff about the dungeon. And each time they just let him wander by in the night. He's like, bye, and he's holding like a half-rotten fish or an old boot, and he's like, bye, and they're like, how much? He's like, 50 gold, and they're like, I'm not paying 50 gold for one ragged old boot. And so he squeaks off into the night. So this time he came up on like a little barge full of junk, and he's like, bye. And so finally Nexel bought a dented, rusty helmet from him, and he gave them along with it, he gave them a bag that had these 4 sort of Mardi Gras mask things in it. And so Nexel has those, but he doesn't know what the significance of those is. Anyway, so the party gets up to the river, and they decide they're going to try to get far enough away from the city that they won't be in too much danger. And so I've got the river completely full of giant moray eels that I took from the Blight campaign. It's got these giant eels in the waters there, and worse things. There's always a bigger fish in the Drann River. So the party grabs themselves a couple more. I think they actually found a boat. They did some good search rolls, and they found a discarded boat, and they were crossing across, and I had to make a perception check because all of a sudden all of the eels kind of disappeared. And what it was, I decided to use this as an opportunity to bring back a character that had sort of escaped from a prior fight with the party. It was none other than the Grey Nisp from, again, 5th edition foes from Necromancer Games. The party fought him way back in like Henchman's Memoir 3 or 4, and so I decided that in the Drann River, him and his girlfriend, because now they're higher levels, so he's going to need a little help. Him and his girlfriend were out hunting the Drann River, and so I had everybody roll a perception check to see if they could notice that all of a sudden all the giant eels disappear, right? So these guys show up, and they decide they're going to attack the party. They've got some magical abilities. They can cast Slow, they can cast Hold Monster, and they tried that on Thaddeus, I think it was, and Thaddeus is like, but I'm not a monster, which is super funny if you've ever seen the videos for on the set of 5th edition. I'll try to leave a card for it up in the corner. I'm a monster! Rawr. So he is a monster, but he didn't get held, and the slow spell only affected Nexel. So these guys were already at a disadvantage. I gave them partial cover because only their head and shoulders were sticking up out of the water. But they were going to have a tough time against the party. All I wanted was for the two of them working together to be able to capsize the boat and dump all these fools into the river. Send my artificer straight to the bottom, which I'm sure in the 5th edition rules, it's like you can be wearing full plate mail and carrying 800 pounds of gold, and you only have a -1 to your swim checks or something. But it's just in my mind, I knew that dumping them in the water was going to be epically bad for them. But they managed to keep the boat afloat. I think Atticus even used heroic inspiration at one point to make sure that the boat didn't get tipped over. and they started dishing out a lot of damage to the girlfriend over here. And they kept saying, I'm like, which one are you attacking? And they're like, the green one. And I'm sorry, but the gray Nisp, you know, he's green too, man. And so anyway, they were like, the 3D one. So eventually they finished her off. He went into a blind rage. They finished him off. And the party made it through across the river and up towards Schloss Mordenheim. And when we finished off, they were approaching Schloss Mordenheim, and they could see in the distance this basically a flesh golem patrolling the grounds of the estate, and they were going to have to figure out how they were going to take him out. And that'll be next time. Thanks for joining us for the Henchman's Memoirs.